Hello everyone, welcome to Let's Crack UPSC CSE English. About me, I am Sandeep Bhushan. I have 8 years of teaching experience for civil services. I teach international relations, internal security, and in-depth analysis of Hindu editorials and articles. And this video is in regards to how to crack prelims 2020. But prior to that, you have a notification that is in regards to subscribing the Let's Crack UPSC CSE English, which is India's largest learning platform. And upon the subscription, you will have access to unlimited live and recorded courses from India's best educators. And the other privileges what you would get once you subscribe is that daily live classes, live testing quizzes, structured courses, and unlimited access. And you also have the top educators at Unacademy, the one when you can see them on your screen. And these are the other top educators wherein you can also view them, you can see them on your screen. And in regards to the Let's Crack UPSC CSE English, you have the courses of all this, that is polity, geography, current affairs, UPSC batches, CSE batches, and all this what you are able to view it on your screen. And along with this, you have the courses at Let's Crack UPSC CS English, Governance, Indian Society, Answer Writing, and also in regards to the interview preparation. So these are all the courses in the Let's Crack UPSC CS English, and you can also go ahead with having all this once you go ahead with subscription. That is in regards to the UPSC CSE subscription, you have 12 months and 24 months subscription. And the 24-month subscription, the amount is 48,000. And you can go ahead with the subscription using my code SBT10, that is Sandeep Bhushan Thummala 10. And once you subscribe with my code, you will get an additional 10% discount on the amount. That is the original price 48,000, and the discounted amount would be 43,200. And this 43,200 is very a nominal in compared to the amount what you are actually paying for 40, I mean the 24 months. For 24 months you are actually paying the amount what you are paying for the 13 months. So that means for 1 year plus 1 month, 1 year plus 1 month, you are getting for 2 years of subscription. So do take the maximum benefit of going ahead with the subscription of 24 months. Take the advantage and go ahead with subscribing for 24 months. If you haven't subscribed, please do go ahead with subscribing, and also please inform your friends in regards to the opportunity or the privilege you have in regards to subscribing for 24 months, while you will be paying only for 13 months, but you would be having the entire subscription for 24 months, wherein you can see all my courses in regards to my classes, in regards to editorials, analysis, in-depth analysis of editorials or articles, not only my classes but also the other classes from the various educators of various courses. So you will have this benefit. So go ahead with that 24 months, which is also apt for preparation for the UPSC CSE UPSC examination. So it's always better to go ahead with subscribing UPSC CSE subscription for 24 months. And please do not forget to use my code SBT10, that is Sandeep Bhushan Thummala 10. And now we will get into the topic, that is in regards to the in-depth analysis of editorials and articles of the Hindu newspaper. So it is all important that how best you go ahead with reading the editorials, articles, and also in regards to how you identify the keywords, key phrases, which are very important for prelims and also for the mains point of view, in regards to mains, in regards to descriptive point of view. So it all depends upon how you read, how you analyze, and then how you understand it, and then how you compare it with or analyze or make sure that you are identifying the keywords. And this is very important, and from this video or this session you will be benefited how you need to pick up and what are the various keywords I am trying to emphasize or pick up, and then make you understand that this is the way you need to go ahead with analyzing the editorials and articles, which is very important for prelims point of view. And the topics to be discussed are corona bonds and also in regards to the economic liberalization. The one who is watching the video, I would say hi to them. So you have the corona bonds and also economic liberalization. Esther Vatana has joined. Hi Esther. And then first I would go ahead with the economic liberalization. First, before getting into the corona bonds, I would go ahead with the economic liberalization. So this is the article in today's newspaper which talks about economic liberalization and its faults. So everyone or most of us who have read in the books in regards to the liberalization, globalization, privatization, it's all very important and good and necessary. It was imperative for the government of India to go ahead with the LPG system, that is liberalization, globalization and privatization. But here in this regards, on the backdrop of the COVID-19 or pandemic COVID-19, that it is very clear that these authors or the experts are mentioning that economic liberalization and its fault. That means there is some faults in the economic liberalization, and that we are going ahead with comparing it with the now the situation that is in regards to the COVID-19, how the impact is happening because of the economic liberalization, how various countries are reeling under pressure to handle the situation in regards to the equipments, medical equipments, medicines, and also the personal protective gears, that is personal protective equipments. So N95 masks, ventilators, are all those, how difficult it is for the frontline workers or for the ICMR or for the government health ministry and also the doctors at the hospitals. It is very difficult for them to go ahead with handling all this. So the authors here feel that on the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, that there is an economic liberalization. There is a fault in the economic liberalization. So that is what is being mentioned, and then we will look at all that in a very comprehensive manner, which will be useful for the prelims point of view, analytical, factual, and also for mains descriptive point of view. So now we will get into the topic, that is the economic liberalization. And we have seen this concept of liberalization has started. It was for the betterment or the welfare of the all the countries together, that is the developed countries, developing countries, and also the underdeveloped countries. The liberalization has brought in the movement of the people, movement of the assets, movement of the goods across the globe, especially in regards to the raw materials from the underdeveloped or the developing countries, and also the labor from the underdeveloped and developing countries, and the finished goods to most of the developed countries or developed nations. So if you look at the way I have said, or the way I have explained, or the way I have put the introduction, going ahead with the linking with the underdeveloped, developing, and then the developed countries, and how the goods, movement of the goods, and in regards to the trade, what has happened, and also the raw material, and then the finished goods, and also in regards to the labor, that is a cheap labor, which was actually taken into consideration by the developed countries in making sure that the liberalization has or will be benefited to the most developed countries, keeping in mind that they would get the major profits while the liberalization has taken place. And we have seen that in the late 1980s, and we have seen the transnational corporation. Transnational, that means from country to country, various countries, the corporations have started, that is in regards to the shifting of the production base. That is what I have talking, or what I was talking about, the movement of the goods, the movement of the production, the movement of the manufacturing industries, what the way it has shifted from one country to another country, making sure that it was actually for the benefit of the developed country, because they did identify the developing countries and the underdeveloped countries wherein they can go ahead with a production basis, wherein they can go ahead with producing their goods, and then also focus on the cheap labor, and also the raw materials which were not present in those countries or those geographical areas, wherein they would get it from the developing countries and then the underdeveloped countries. So this was the main focus in the 1980s, and that was called as the transnational corporations, and that was called as the transnational corporations. And this transnational corporation is actually going ahead with or starting or shifting or coming up with the production basis in the developing countries, going ahead with or coming up with the production basis in the developing countries, especially they are focused in Asia. And this transnational corporation in the 1980s to shift the production basis from the developed countries to the developing countries. So while they were focusing on the developing countries, they have especially looked at or they have identified Asia. Why Asia? Because they have identified Asia in search of cheap labor and raw material. Please look at it. The Asia was targeted as a developing country when they could shift their production basis. The reason was because the Asia had a good amount of knowledge but unemployment, good amount of raw materials but lack of technology. Thereby, the developed countries have shifted their production bases to Asia. The reason was unemployment and then more of raw materials but lack of technology, more of knowledge but lack of unemployment, job creation. So thereby they have created jobs with a cheap labor. And then by creating jobs or by by going ahead with the base for the productions or manufacturing sectors coming up, they have also utilized the raw materials from Asia itself, but the end product was being transferred to the developed countries, and this was actually in the 1980s. And we have seen this, that the developed countries have gone ahead with shifting their production base. Please do understand, the developed countries have gone ahead with shifting their production base. The reason was not just going ahead with, they wanted to liberalize, they wanted to save, they wanted to make sure that the developing countries such as Asia would also prosper. The main reason was not that, but they wanted to make sure that the polluting, shifting the polluting and the labor intensive industries which were suited for the developing countries. So the developed countries have gone ahead with shifting the production basis, wherein all the production which was involved in the polluting, which was involved in the labor intensive industries, they have shifted them to the developing countries. That is in the form of economic liberalization, in the midst of the economic liberalization, but the entire ownership has remained with them itself. The entire ownership has remained with them itself, or the ownership was kept with them, but they were shifting the production base which were polluting the nature, the country, the developing country or the region, and wherein it was very laborious in regards to the labor intensive. So this was the main reason why how the transnational corporation have started in 1980s, in the pretext of economic liberalization, in the pretext of economic liberalization. And the world has witnessed the development of the global supply chains, starting with garments. So the global supply chain or else the liberalization has intensified, or the world has witnessed the development of the global supply chain with the starting of the garments or shifting the production bases, especially in regards to the garments. And this has created huge companies with massive market power. And because of the massive market power, whichever the companies or the countries have shifted their global supply chains across the countries, across the globe, they started dictating terms. They started dictating terms to whom? To the smaller manufacturer, that is the manufacturers who are in the developing countries, who are actually being used the countries which have been used by their raw materials, and wherein they have used that labor which was at a cheap, they were given the prices at a cheap rate. So it was used very systematically, and the dictating of terms have taken place, and this has created a value chain to produce very cheaply. The production has come up very cheaply, but the returns or the finished goods was very, again, sent back to the developed countries. So there was definitely economic liberalization which has taken place, and because of the liberalization, the underdeveloped and developing countries started having more of employment and revenue generation, or the incomes and the savings. But at the same time, they were almost exploited. They have been dictated by terms by the developed countries, and that is what is actually, there is a fault. There is a fault. What the author says, the economic liberalization which has started, that is in the form of transnational corporations in the 1980s, has made a kind of dictating terms, and there are faults in the economic liberalization. Now I'll get into the second part of it. This manufacturing has shifted from a decentralized production system. So the liberalization has brought in a new concept, that is the decentralization production system, which was spreading across many countries, which was spreading across all the countries which were cheaper, which were having the raw materials which can be done in regards to labor intensive. So all these were located and they were identified, and then this shifting of the manufacturing has taken place. When the manufacturing sectors have been shifted from the developed to developing countries, so what has come into existence, a key phrase or the new concept or the term has come up, is decentralization of production, or decentralized production system has spread across various countries across the world, and only a few locations or few countries could try to take the maximum benefit of the decentralized production system because of the economic liberalization, because of the developed countries shifting their production base to the developing countries in search of cheap labor, in search of raw material. And this, in this process, China has emerged. Please understand this. China has emerged to be a major one. So in the midst of the decentralized production system, the country which has been maximum benefit, or which the country which has emerged as a major role in the manufacturing sector, is none other than the China. So China has taken the entire benefit of the economic liberalization. Even though the topic what we are discussing is there are faults in the economic liberalization, but to larger extent the faults were not to the China, but it was to various other Asian countries or various other developing countries, wherein the production base has been shifted from the developed countries towards the developing or underdeveloped countries. China has emerged as a global manufacturing hub. Look at it, how it has used this scenario of decentralized production system or economic liberalization, wherein the developed countries were looking at the developing countries at a very inhuman manner and trying to exploit the raw materials, trying to exploit the labor, intensive labor, and then also pollute the region or the developing countries. But China has taken it in a very positive way, and it has emerged as a global manufacturing hub. That is what even now India is also thinking in regards to, that India should be the manufacturing hub of the world. The same what China is now, global manufacturing hub. Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi is wanting to make India, or to become India, a manufacturing hub of the world through an initiative, that is Make in India initiative. And now we'll come back to this China. So China has emerged as a global manufacturing hub, and in case of, when we are looking in very particular to the health products, it has become global supplier. So in regards to the health products, China has become a global supplier of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. This is very important in regards to prelims analytical question. So China has become an active pharmaceutical ingredients, or the global supplier of active pharmaceutical ingredients. And not only that, API, it has also been a global supplier of personal protective equipment, and medical devices diagnostics. So 1, 2, and then this is the third point. So that means look at the way China has actually taken the benefit of the economic liberalization. China is very smartly, very in tune with having its own or taking the possibility or the advantage of its population. It has become the global manufacturing hub because of the concept of in the 1980s the economic liberalization, wherein the developed countries have shifted their production bases from the developed countries into developing countries, and thereby China has become the global manufacturing hub, and it has become, especially in the health products, it has become a global supplier. That is active pharmaceutical ingredients, personal protective equipment, medical devices, diagnostic. And these three are very important at this juncture. These three are very important at this juncture because in regards to medical devices diagnostics, it is supplying the entire world, even the European countries. Although Spain has rejected and then it has sent it back the testing kits, diagnostic kits to China, but still China is the global supplier of medical devices, diagnostic kits, and also in regards to personal protective equipment or personal protective gears, which are feeling or which are shortage across the world because of the pandemic COVID-19. The China is the global supplier even for that in regards to personal protective equipment, and also in regards to the active pharmaceutical ingredients. In regards to the ingredients also, China is supplying, it's a global supplier. When we take into consideration of hydroxychloroquine, wherein India is the largest producer, but in regards to the ingredients, raw materials for that, for in regards to pharmaceuticals composition, again it is dependent on China. That is why China is a global supplier of even active pharmaceutical ingredients, and that is why China has become a global manufacturing hub, especially in regards to health products, and that we are considering it with the kind of shortage what the entire world or the globe is facing, or even the developed countries are facing now. Because look at the liberalization, how the developed countries have shifted their products or production base to developing countries, wherein in the developing countries the manufacturing units have been shifted, wherein those units were polluting the area, polluting the air, and also they were the manufacturing units which were labor intensive, they were shifted, and they were just giving a mere cheap labor to the one who have been working in the manufacturing units of the developing countries. But in spite of all this, the China has become the global manufacturing hub. And now look at China, developed countries such as US and European countries are looking at China for the medical devices diagnostics. They are looking at personal protective equipment. They are also, what do you say, ready as a global supplier for active pharmaceutical ingredients, which are very, very, very essential at this moment to handle the pandemic or COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 patients, infected patients. So look at the way the authors have said that there is a fault. No doubt it is a blessing for the China, but when we look further, when I get into further explanation, you will understand how it is there are faults in the economic liberalization. And now we will look at the COVID-19 outbreak and loss of manufacturing base. Linking of the manufacturing base or the loss of manufacturing base with the COVID-19 outbreak. And this is what is essential when you're preparing for civil services. It's just not reading news and then just winding it up. No, it's always necessary that you need to read, understand, analyze, and link. Read, understand, analyze, and link. How the linking can be done, the way the UPSC might think in regards to the prelims and also in regards to the mains point of view. So in regards to this, now COVID-19 outbreak with the manufacturing base, and because of the COVID-19 outbreak or the pandemic, it has impacted the many governments itself. It has impacted the ability of many governments that they are not in a position to handle the health crisis. It could be even US, it could be Germany, it could be any other countries, what do you say, across the European Union or Europe itself, or else even the the other developed countries. It could be France, Japan, Germany, China. The way it has the governments are not in a position, they have lost the ability to handle the situation. That is along with the developed countries, that they could not put up an effective response to handle the crisis. That is what I've said, and this is what is impacting the manufacturing base. So look at here, China, how best it has used its population, that they have infused that entire population by being part of the manufacturing hub, and then making sure that the entire population or maximum population would be provided the employment. So employment was provided, output also was provided. So it has become the global manufacturing hub. Now we will look at the other point which is little different from what I was emphasizing on the Europe. If you look at how it has impacted, even because see here, even the developed countries ability to handle the health crisis effectively has taken for a toss, even the developed countries, they were not in a position, their ability was not in a point wherein they could handle the health crisis effectively. So that we will look at what has happened to the developed countries, wherein in 1980s, because of the economic liberalization, developed countries have looked at the developing countries only for the finished goods. Now the developed countries are looking at the China and India in regards to the various medical device equipments or diagnostic kits, and also in regards to hydroxychloroquine, that is the anti-malarial drug from India, or pharmaceutical equipments or devices from India and China. So now the developed countries are looking at, or they are dependent or relying on the developing countries such as China and India. UK Prime Minister has asked the country to manufacture, to produce ventilators. Now please understand, or you will have better understanding how the first instance I said, first paragraph of my discussion, my class, I said the developed countries started shifting their production base. I said the developed countries started shifting their production base to especially the developing countries, focusing on Asia, I said. Now you look at the situation. Because of the COVID-19, the developed countries wanted to go ahead with production. What production because of the COVID-19? Ventilators. Look at the way the liberalization or the manufacturing, the production base has shifted, and then how it is impacting negatively on the developed countries during the period of pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, to handle the health crisis. That is what the analysis is. That is what your understanding has to be in regards to the mains point of view. And UK is wanting to go ahead with, it is asking the country to produce ventilators, because they are the one which are in shortage, and they are required, they need for the critical care of COVID-19 patients. And if you look at US, the US president has invoked, this is very very important again, he has invoked what? An act itself. The way India has gone ahead with invoking the act in regards to Epidemic Diseases Act, Essential Commodities Act, Section 144 of IPC, and then CRPC, Criminal Procedure Code, National Disaster Management Act, various acts as India has invoked. The same way US has also invoked the Defense Production Act of 1950. Why did he invoke? Why US President has invoked the Defense Production Act of 1950 is to make sure that they ramp up, they increase the N95 mask production, because they are falling under shortage, and the way the COVID-19 has infected the patient across the US, because they haven't taken it very serious, or the stricter measures were not taken into action the way it has to be taken at the right time. The US hasn't taken the measures, stricter measures of social distancing, and now the situation has gone so pathetic, or the viral, or the spread of the virus, that now US is in short of N95 masks. So US President has invoked Defense Production Act 1950. This is again very important in regards to the prelims point of view. And then Nicola has joined. Hi Nicola, good evening. I'm taking up the topic in regards to the economic liberalization and its faults. Economic liberalization and its faults. There are definitely positive in regards to the economic liberalization for all the developing countries and underdeveloped countries, but at the same time, on the backdrop of COVID-19, on the backdrop of the pandemic situation, there are faults, and that is what now we were just looking at the faults. Now UK Prime Minister has asked the country to produce the ventilators because the productions are not in the developed countries. The base of the production bases are not in the developed countries. Because of the economic liberalization, it has been shifted to the developing countries such as Asia, that is India and then China, focusing on Asia. And then US President has gone ahead with invoking Defense Production Act 1952, so that they wanted to ramp up or increase the N95, because there is no production of ventilators in UK, the developed country. There is no production of N95 mask in US, the developed countries, because these countries do not go ahead with the production. Now they have shifted it to the developing countries. They have shifted the production wherein it would be a labor intensive. Please do understand here, wherein there you have the labor intensive. They have shifted the production units wherein there will be polluting because of the particular production of the particular produce. They have shifted wherever there is more of what is a cheap labor can be taken into consideration. They have shifted. Now the problem that they are facing is their shortage of the goods, because they are not producing. They have been shifted their production units, and that is what is causing a concern. And that is what the, what do you say, the article talks about: liberalization, economic liberalization and its faults. What is the faults is to the developed countries, that they are unable to, what do you say, they do not have, or they cannot, or they are now searching, or they are in mode of producing the ventilators and N95. And if you look at the French health minister has stated that the country may nationalize vaccines companies if necessary. That means it will take over the companies which are going ahead with vaccination or producing the vaccines. So if necessary, the health minister says that it will take over all those companies which are into the production of vaccines. So look at the developed countries are now wanting to have that control over the production. Please do understand here. Now the developed countries wanted to have the control over the, please do underscore, highlight the word control, control over the production. That is what the situation has changed. That is what the fault is. And the Spain has nationalized all the private hospitals. So again, the government has, what you say, nationalized because of the pandemic situation, COVID-19. They're all now national, government hospitals. And if you look at Israel and Chile also, they have issued compulsory licenses for what? For medicines which are affordable. So everything, the now the developed countries, the government of the developed countries, the government of the developed countries wanted to have control over the production units itself. I'm talking here, it's in regards to the medicines, hospitals, vaccinations, in regards to N95, in regards to ventilators. Look at the way the time has changed. The COVID-19 has changed the entire scenario, the system of the economic liberalization, or the concept of economic liberalization, wherein earlier it was the developed countries have passed on to the developing countries. Now the developing countries are the production units, or they are the manufacturing hub of the various respective products in Asia, and then the developed countries are wanting it now to produce it. And we have seen the Chinese billionaire Jack Ma has sent a flight which is containing 5.4 million face masks to whom? To the one who are in need, the countries which are in need. He has also sent kits, that is diagnostic kits, and also the protective clothing, that what we call it as personal protective equipment, and the face shield, that is the mask, to US. So look at the way earlier, that is in 1980s, the developed country such as US then has shifted its production base because it was polluting the area, that is the climate or the air quality, because it was labor intensive, because they need not pay more of money to the Americans, cheap labor, raw material was not there. But look at now the Chinese billionaire Jack Ma has sent to US itself. Look at the situation. Look at what the economic liberalization has come up with, a new concept at the time of pandemic situation. Look at the way the economic liberalization has come up with a new concept at the time of pandemic situation. So developed countries are looking at developing countries. Developed countries wanted to go ahead with production now. Earlier they have shifted their production bases to the developing countries. It exposes, what exposes the Jack Ma, what he has done? It exposes the poor state of preparedness. Complacent. Complacent. They were all thinking that they are economically stronger. They're all developed economies. Thereby, whatever they need, they will get it whenever they ask. Yes, they would get it, but at the situation now wherein there is total global lockdown, and now how would the produce or the products get into the developed economies? That is what is poor state of preparedness by the so-called developed or developed countries or developed economies. And now they are dependent on the imports for essential goods from the developing countries, such as we have seen the active pharmaceutical ingredients, personal protective equipments, medical devices, diagnostics from China and India. Test, that is diagnostic kits test from the China, and also in regards to the hydroxychloroquine from India. This shows what is good for the company and may not be good for the country. That means the country which is actually going ahead with the liberalization process, shifting their production units to the developing countries, is not good for the country. But the company which is involved in the trading is only good for the company, not for the country. This is very, very important. So the COVID-19 pandemic has shown, or it has brought to the limelight, what is good for the company may not be good for the country. Explain. So you have the a thorough understanding now on what regards the question could be answered. Therefore, overwhelming objective of the private sector led economic growth has proved disastrous. That means there should not be a total control of private sector led economic growth. If there is a private sector led economic growth, it will be disastrous. And this disastrous what the world or the developed countries has experienced because of pandemic COVID-19 situation once again proves that there has to be control by the government on the economy, wherein the economy of the country should not be controlled by the private sector. That is what the Toto conclusion or summary is all about. And now we will look at the India and economic liberalization. If you look at India, economic liberalization has damaged government capacity. So, as per the author, they say that there is a negative framework in regards to economic liberalization for India, because it has damaged the government's capacity. As I've said, the previous paragraph or the line, what I've said, that the private based economic growth or private sector economic growth for the country is not at all good. And if it is continuing, then it is a disastrous. And that is what the comparing economic liberalization with India, it says that it is a damage done to the government's capacity itself. Because once the liberalization concept has come into being, along with the privatization and globalization in India, the government's capacity to handle or the government capacity to have control over the production has lost, or it has reduced, that means it has had incapacitated the governments to respond to the emergencies, because the government is not having the total control on the production, because the production is by the private players, thereby they have lost the government's capacity, and it has damaged the government's response to react for the emergencies. And emergencies, what we are talking about, it is in regards to what we are experiencing the post COVID-19 or COVID pandemic situation. We are falling short of India. We are talking about in India. We are falling short of personal protective equipments or gears, masks, ventilators, diagnostic kits, and also in regards to the kind of the medical equipments or devices which are required for the doctors, nurses, and the frontline staff workers who are involved to contain the spread of coronavirus. So all this is impacting negatively, and as per the author, it is a damage to government's capacity, and it has also dismantling of the license raj. And because of the economic liberalization, because of the emergence of economic liberalization, what has happened is the license raj has come to an end. The license raj has come to an end. That is a good system and good change. Economic reform, it's a good reform. License raj has dismantled, but the other side of it is government's capacity over the responding to the emergencies have reduced again. License raj is reduced, no doubt, dismantling of license raj because of the economic liberalization, but the other side is the damage done to the government's capacity. The what capacity to respond to the emergencies? Government's capacity to respond to the emergencies have reduced, and this, the logic and policies of economic liberalization, has seriously undermined the manufacturing capabilities of specifically focusing on the health products in India, because these are the industry of India, pharmaceutical industry in India is the one which has across 200 countries, across 200 countries supplying or exporting the medicines or the medical equipments. But because of the economic liberalization, the policies taken up in regards to manufacturing the capabilities of the pharmaceuticals is not under the control of government totally, but even the private players are having major role in regards to the logic and policies, particularly in regards to manufacturing of the drugs, medicines, or medical devices in regards to the pharmaceutical sector. And we also have the short-sighted policy measures because of the economic liberalization. Along with that, the other one which is impacting India is the short-sighted policy measures. And because of the short-sighted policy measures, along with that, the objective of enhancing profitability of the private sector. So one thing is from the government side, wherein the government's policy measures are all short-sighted, and then in regards to the private sector, they always focus on the enhancing the profitability or increasing the profitability, and this has made sure that along with this too, we are also dependent on import of raw materials, because as I said that China is the global supplier of active pharmaceutical ingredients, I said. And in regards to the hydroxychloroquine, India is dependent on the raw materials, that is of the active pharmaceutical ingredients, which China is the global supplier to even India. In regards to India manufacturing or producing the hydroxychloroquine drug. So again, these are the one which are really cause of concern and the hurdles. And if you look at this, yes, the time is slowly changing and there are faults, not completely, but at this scenario, when we look it in regards to the health condition or health crisis, there is a necessity that there has to be a second round of economic reforms, that can change India again, making sure that they are, or else they, in the sense, the government is having the capacity to respond to the emergencies or emergency like situation what India is facing in regards to the pandemic or COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. And the way we are dependent on PPE, that is personal protective equipment, or medical devices, that is N95 masks, ventilators, diagnostic kits. If you look at, there is 100% dependence on chemical component. That is what I was talking about, hydroxychloroquine. When you call that chemical component, that is called as reagents, wherein that is again limiting our testing capacity, wherein India is not really having the capacity to go ahead with the diagnostic kits, because it is dependent on China because of the liberalization, because India did not go ahead with the concept. Because of the liberalization, government is not having control over the PPE, medical devices and diagnostic kits, which are essential at this moment. And in regards to the government from expanding the testing, what we are all suppose, I mean, India is actually to go ahead with more of testing, but because of the diagnostic kits, shortage of kits, ventilators, medical devices, PPEs, we are not able to go ahead with expanding our testing, and that is the main reasons. Why? Because of the dependency. And when we look at the global supply production chain system, when we look at the global supply chain production or supply production chain system, it has been totally destroyed, because the manufacturing base in developed and developing countries have also resulted in job loss and poor working condition in sectors because of the pandemic situation. And not only that, the kind of production of the supply chain system, even now the developing countries have become more particular about the protection laws or labor laws, and those labor laws are also creating a kind of hurdle for the production of, or in regards to the demand supply or supply production chain system itself. So when we look at here, it is a demand and supply. So this demand and supply, which is happening across the world, linking various countries, is gradually, it is destroying, because earlier the developing countries which were taken up the manufacturing units because of the economic liberalization almost three and a half decades back, now when those countries, they are also going ahead with the labor protection laws. So now then the countries which were ready to accept the economic liberalization because of employment generation, now if you look at those countries itself, that is the developing countries, are worried about their labor protection laws. And that is why global protection and chain supply chains, or this global value system, is being hit. And that is what is a cause of concern, because of the economic liberalization, totally depending on few countries for many products, and that has become an hurdle at this time, and this has created unorganized army of laborers, because of the demand supply, global supply demand chain system which has destroyed. Because of that, it has created unorganized army of laborers, and it is preventing many developing countries in offering relief. Because in India, after the national lockdown, we have discussed at length in the various classes that it is because of the migrant workers, because of the unorganized sectors, employees in the unorganized sectors or the informal sectors. Because of this, the main badly hit were the migrant laborers. And if you look at this, is what is creating a problem to the developing countries even now, that is the unorganized army. And because the India, or India especially, when we are discussed now, when we are talking about now, India has been maximum 60% of the workforce are in the unorganized sectors, because India is also part of the production base. India is part of it, same as China. That is why when lockdown has taken place, it has very badly hit on the unorganized sectors. And now the unorganized employees in the unorganized sectors are totally under the loss of jobs. And I would conclude this by saying a virus has made, the pandemic has made the entire world to rethink about what? About our obsession. Obsession in regards to what? Economic efficiency theory. That is what the developed countries were thinking. Because of the economic liberalization, the developed countries have shifted their production base units from developed countries to the developing countries, especially to Asia, wherein they had what is a knowledge but no jobs. They have the raw materials, that is the developing countries have the raw materials, that is especially China, Asia. They had the raw materials but they did not have the technology. So therein the developed countries have pushed their production units bases to developing countries, wherein there would be more of pollution through the production units. It would be production units would be involved in the intensive labor force, and wherein the ultimate is the raw material, or the raw material was not there, and the finished goods would be back to the developed countries with very cheaper cost, with very cheap labor. Quality of the end product would be into the developed countries. So the quality would be in the developed countries, but the amount what they were paid for the quality of the final finished goods was not being paid, but it was paid at a cheaper labor force. So that is what the economic efficiency theory, what the world is thinking about, that is economic liberalization. And this implores, it pleads and appeals us. Why it pleads and appeals us? That to put in place an industrial policy. Now what is important is not the economic efficiency theory or the economic liberalization, but a very well placed industrial policy is very important. Why industrial policy is important? To maintain core capacity. What is a core capacity? That is the health products. And whenever we face any kind of unforeseen situation in the forthcoming crisis, that India has to be ready with its industrial policy in place, wherein it focuses on the health products. It increases its capacity of handling or manufacturing the health products, so that it will not be dependent on imports such as China or else from various other countries in regards to ventilators. But India has to be ready with its industrial policy, which would be having a core capacity in health products, and so that we can face the next crisis more decisively, more accurately, more promptly, not depending on the imports, that is in regards to the raw materials from the China or ventilators from various other countries. And I feel that this session was very important, informative and knowledgeable for you all. So I request you all to go ahead with liking the video, subscribe the video, hit the bell button while you're watching this video in the YouTube, that is Let's Crack UPSC CSE English channel, and then make sure that you are subscribing this. And if you haven't subscribed the channel, that is Let's Crack UPSC CSE English, please do subscribe with my code, that is SBT10, that is Sandeep Bhushan Thummala 10. And while you subscribe using my code, you will get 10% discount. And please go ahead with subscribing for 24 months, because you are benefited by subscribing for 24 months. The reason is you would be paying only for the 13 months amount, but you will be entirely having subscription for 24 months. So take the maximum benefit of the offer, the privilege, and then go ahead with subscribing for 24 months. And there is another announcement, that go ahead with downloading the app, that is Unacademy app. And then by downloading that Unacademy app, you can be part of the Unacademy special classes. You can view through the Unacademy platform the special classes. You can be part of the special classes, which are not only in regards to the current affairs or the in-depth analysis of editorials and articles, but also you can also view all other courses from various other educators. So take the maximum benefit of subscribing it for 24 months, and also be part of the Unacademy special classes. You get or be part of the Unacademy special classes. How can you be part of the Unacademy special classes? By downloading the app of Unacademy, wherein you can have these special classes free, not paying any amount, but you can, what do you say, be part of the special classes. And see you tomorrow at this time. Thank you very much.